speakers for today, we have with us Dr. Vijay Agarwal, who would be the moderator for the panel discussion. He's President CAHO. We have Mr. Suresh Lulla, co-chairman of the IMC Quality Improvement and Technology Committee, Dr. Rama Rajashekaran, director of the Ganga Hospital, Dr. Parag Rindani, head WOCAD Hospital, Dr. Anup Nigvekar, director projects, ML Dawale Memorial Organization, and Mr. Joy Chakrabarti, COO, PD Hinduja Hospital and Medical Research Center, Mumbai. The IMC Ramakrishna Bajaj National Quality Award Trust will be completing 25 years this year, 2021. So we are very privileged to have the very first program for the year, starting with this panel discussion in the healthcare category, Journey Beyond Accreditation. This is a joint program with Consortium of Accredited Healthcare Organizations, CAHO. We thank them for their valuable support. We now begin the discussion by introducing our moderator, Dr. Vijay Agarwal, President of CAHO. Dr. Agarwal, besides being a pediatrician of repute, he has played a key role in making an impact in improving the state of healthcare in India. He played a key role in driving national programs such as Pulse Polio programs and introducing centralized waste management scheme in Delhi. These programs have had far-reaching impact. He continues to leverage his expertise as an excellent organizer, strategist, and administrator, and is presently championing the cause of patient safety and enhancing quality in healthcare delivery. We thank him for being a part of this wonderful discussion. We request now Dr. Agarwal to kindly take this program forward and introduce the speakers and have the discussions as per the plans. Thank you so much. Dr. Agarwal, over to you.
Thank you, Maya, for this kind introduction. And good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's really a proud privilege to bring you greetings also from CAHO. And I think joining hands with another prestigious organization which has been working in the field of quality. And I congratulate the IMC Ramakrishna Bajaj National Quality Award organization to have completed 25 years this year. So heartiest congratulations to this wonderful team who have done a great job in this country in spearheading quality. The topic today, friend, is Journey Beyond Accreditation. And I think we all understand that accreditation is nothing else but the internal and the external, I would say, peer assessment of the internal and external people against the standards which have been laid down regarding the functioning of a hospital. We all understand the perceived benefits of accreditation, and which was supposed to make a healthcare very safe and very affordable and very, very patient-centric. United States has been one of the leading, I would say, countries who has tremendous amount of years of experience in accreditation. In fact, some kind of an accreditation started by the American College of Surgeons in 1917. And in 1950, the Joint Commission came into existence. However, in spite of 100 years of their existence of accreditation process and a country which is very, very affluent and very influential, in spite of all that, the healthcare does not seem to be getting any safer even there. So in a way, we have to look something beyond accreditation, or we have to understand that accreditation cannot be an endpoint for achieving patient safety, and many things, of course, related to it. And that's what we are going to discuss today. As Maya has already introduced certain names, which are all very well-known names in the field of quality in our country. They are very well all-known people. So I'll start with Mr. Suresh Lulla, who is a champion of quality I would say, one of the persons who were, I mean, the moment I think about it, I mean, the guy who has rubbed shoulders with people like the quality guru, J.M. Juran. And he is the founder member of the IMC Ramakrishna Bajaj National Quality Awards. And he has been instrumental in spearheading the performance excellence model of this organization across the country. So in the field of quality, he is today a very well-known name in the country, and especially for all the people related even to CAHO. So, Mr. Lulla, I will request you to probably tell us about the relationship of accreditation to the continuous quality improvement to performance excellence. How does this pyramid goes up, and where can one expect what? So over to Mr. Lulla.
Thank you, Dr. Agarwal, for your cordial introduction. He tends to exaggerate a lot, and I'm quite flattered by what all he has said. Thank you again. Let's go to the genesis of performance excellence. In the early 1980s, Japan broke the backbone of the US economy in the auto industry through quality. It had a major impact on the GDP of the nation. So the Secretary of Commerce, Malcolm Baldrige, invited Professor Edwards Deming and Dr. J.M. Juran to help build a strategy to contain Japanese economic aggression. Now, the key inputs that came from Professor Edwards Deming is look after the process. There's some disturbance. Look after the process, and the output will look after itself. Very profound. Look after the process, and the output will look after itself. Further, a system is an orchestra of processes. They all have to work together. They're interdependent. In turn, Dr. Juran, he said that managing for quality is not fully delegable. There's a role for upper management. In the past, it was always shop floor and operations. You got to manage your processes with the quality trilogy. Quality planning, where you set the standard. Quality control, where you maintain the standard. And quality improvement, where you challenge the standard. These standards must be customer focused, not industry performance focused. Planning, control, improvement, as Dr. Juran once at a coffee table told me, is like the Indian Indian mythology and trilogy. Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. In healthcare, the customer takes on a lot more importance. The risk associated, patient safety, human life is at stake. So the processes have to be absolutely robust and reliable. You can't do knee-jerk processes. With this was born the performance excellence model, which later on got labeled as the Baldrige model. The IMC Ramakrishna Bajaj National Quality Award criteria are a clone of the Baldrige criteria. What is the underlying framework? There's a foundation where leadership, strategic planning, and customer focus must be in place. Leadership, strategic planning, customer focus. If these are not in place, any amount of effort that you do towards excellence will not work. You're guaranteed to fail. The infrastructure required is a quality management system. A quality management system, and in this case, it could be the NABH. You also need to have a focus on customer-supplier processes. End-to-end, wing-to-wing. You need to get a total organization involved. You can't have quality in a department. This means that quality must form part of job design, performance appraisal, promotion. Information and knowledge. We have a lot of data, but do we have information? Information happens when data is processed with quality tools. And when information is applied, it becomes knowledge. Knowledge remains with individuals. It goes with promotions, transfers, and exits from an organization. Education and training. Company-wide education and training. And this is not, again, a departmental activity. All leaders should have as attributes trainer, coach, counselor, facilitator. And of course, quality management. The Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, quality planning, quality control, quality improvement. The RBNQA, as we call Ramakrishna Bajaj Award, the scoring guidelines serve as a compass on the road to performance excellence. There are 4 milestones. The first, establish a system. ISO 9001, NABH. Control the processes in the system. In other words, maintain the defined standards. The variability should come down. The second milestone is make a habit of continual quality improvement. That's part of NABH. But make a habit of continual quality improvement. solve the chronic problems in the processes. Incremental, logical, left brain improvements. The byproduct is cost of poor quality reduction. Believe me, this number is so large, it would be at least 30% of total costs. The third milestone is where we see processes as made up of practices. Proactively induce disruptive, innovative changes through creative, right brain thinking. I would recommend cross-industry benchmarking to bring out this creativity. Benchmarking of best practices to facilitate innovative next practices. The byproduct is increased revenues. A sterling example, which is globally recognized, is that of Aravind Eye Hospital. They benchmarked Pizza Hut and McDonald's to improve the productivity of their outputs. The fourth and the last is quality planning. Design an orchestra of processes seeded with best and next practices that benefit the external customer, internal customer, society, Mother Earth. In conclusion, profit is the byproduct of performance excellence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lula. Every sentence that you speak is worth its weight in gold. Every sentence that you speak, you can even have a webinar on each of those sentences. That is so profound. Wisdom comes through you. So beautifully you said that look after the processes and the outcomes will be taken care by itself. Such profound statement. And to create an orchestra of processes. Normally, even within one process, there is no orchestra. I'm talking about orchestra of processes. It's a real profound statements which have come from you, and I'm sure that all the participants would have benefited from it. Now I call upon Madam Rama Rajshekharan, Director of the Ganga Hospital. She is also the zonal chairman of KAHO for the South India. She started her career as a Master of Fine Arts in Arts and Architecture, and later pursued Diploma in Hospital Administration as well as MPhil in Hospital and Health Sciences. She is a very passionate on nursing education and is a very committed social worker in Rotary and many other fields. Rama Rajshekharan has created a huge impact, I think, in the functioning of Ganga Hospital, which is known as one of the centers of excellence in orthopedics and plastic surgery, not only in India, I think even globally. I have had the pleasure of visiting that hospital, a great, great hospital too, and worth a visit. So over to Madam Rama Rajshekharan to understand from you as to how the kind of processes that you learned from the IMC Ramakrishna Bajaj National Quality Award. You have been one of the recipient. How has it enhanced your journey from accreditation onwards? And how has it resulted in better even clinical outcomes? Thank you.
Good evening, sir, and thank you for your warm words. It was a bit too much. It was very nice of you, sir. And I'm feeling proud and happy to be part of as a panelist for this today's quality journey. As everybody says, journey and today's journey beyond accreditation, it's something very important because personally I'm giving you a lot of our hospital's personal best practices and clinical outcomes, which I thought I should share it with the other people so that they will know what we are doing. And as Suresh Ullah sir said, I mean, he spoke fantastically, very nice. As Vijay Agarwal said, sir, every line can be a good topic for discussion, especially when he said, look after the process and the outlook looks after itself. That was something, you know, it's really, I think it's got into me so much. It's fantastic. And as everybody says, you know, accreditation is something which is, everything's, oh, I've got an accreditation. No, I don't think the buck stops there. There's more to it, which I feel everybody should take up, because in that way, when as I talk, I will talk about how this IMC Ramakrishna Bajaj, when we applied, how much it opened up our eyes also. There's more to it than basic accreditation, because now NABH has become the basic standard, and below which I think there's the safety of the patient and the hospital, and everything becomes a real jeopardy. And it's not just the end point of inequality. That's what I really feel, and I really think. When I was thinking what to really share, I felt that any patient in any hospital, his first outlook will be, I mean, his satisfaction is most important. The clinical outcome is what really matters to the patient most, because it also reflects his I mean, like, you know, he comes in with whatever, any pain or whatever, and he goes back and he feels, okay, his results were good. That's what I think plays a very important part. And this cannot just be done. It has to be like a teamwork. It just reflects the result of a collection of all the safety and excellence standards of the whole unit, of the whole department, of the whole hospital, because everybody is involved in it. And for that, I have just taken very simple two examples or two things. There are many, but I've just taken two because of paucity of time. And one is care bundle approach, which everybody knows. I mean, it's not something new. But what we have applied in our hospital on one unit has applied this was, they had taken the care bundle to bring down the real infection rate, which normally everybody do it. But what they did was, I mean, it was something, a new practice which they started, wherein for all our elective spine patients and for our TKR and THR and those not trauma, but at the other side, they had started using the chlorhexidine wash, which I got the bath wash for the patients the night before surgery and on the morning of the surgery for the pre-op, I mean. So they did that, and they found that there was a tremendous drop in the infection rate. The other factors also, which I'm not really highlighting, but I took up this because this is something which is very simple and can be really implemented, because the results were very astounding. In fact, our SSI had dropped so much during when we had this surgical site infection rate before and after, and throughout it was something which was like a real turning point for us too. And when we got into it, I think one of the main things was, this was of course present in a lot of hospitals. I'm not going to the details, but they did a study of nearly 9,607 patients, and that was to prove that the results, and this is one of the results they brought out, and how much it has dropped down still further. So this has been really accepted in the international journals, and it is being implemented in other international hospitals also, which was very satisfying to us. I mean, it is a little simple tool, but we made sure that it gets implemented. The process was put into place. These are the things, we just tick it, okay, for a pre-op, these are the things we have to do. That's how we process that. And also another thing which I like to share was, our hospital being one of the big, as Sir said, one of the big trauma centers. One of the major challenge we had was how to get the best in the clinical outcomes. When numbers are very high, it becomes very difficult. So we took it up as a challenge because the quality should not be compromised. The patient care, the patient outcome should not be in any way compromised. And for that, we have, on an average, we have like 70 major traumas. Even during the COVID time, it just went down to like 50 or 60s, but not less than that. Trauma surgeries per day. This is a real challenge. For this, we had really taken up we've taken up leadership, because we have very experienced people sitting at as senior consultants. Then we have audits being done, then education and we have goals for improvement. We have retreats where we all, the whole team move into another place, and where they have a lot of discussions and how to go about it. So with that, because we always, these were smaller studies we've done where we found out that miscommunication and lack of communication between the departments, because ours is mainly orthopedics, plastic, and of course trauma team. There's a lot of miscommunication between them. They will do because the fixes are done by the orthopedic surgeons and the flap are done by the plastic surgeons, and how is the patient being monitored. So what we came up with was, we introduced this grand rounds, wherein, as you see in this picture, everybody is involved, like interventionist, anesthetist, plastic surgeon. If it's a neurosurgeon involved, he is being there, an orthopedic surgeon, and a physician assistant. All of them do the rounds so that they give a collective opinion about what the treatment and everything to the patient. So it's like a collective decision, which makes things much easier. And also, we continue this even in outpatients. See, outpatient visit, we had, it's a combined evaluation. Suppose the patient is being treated by both of them. Both the orthopedic surgeon and a plastic surgeon are along with them, so that it saves time for the patient to go from one place to the other. And then, we bring in people together to them, so that we make it much easier for them. Because for us, patients come first, for anybody, any hospital. But the patient satisfaction, the outcome is very important. So that was how we introduced this. And also we had morning meetings, of course, it's more of the consultants, wherein they discussed every surgery being done throughout the whole week. And they've been evaluated, they've been audited, and these are, I'm not going much into it, but then we have a general clinics and how we focus on education, which is also very important for the whole team. And how with this, what happens was, recently this was published in the European Orthopedic Journal. This was very, very well accepted, wherein they said the workflow of a trauma audit was what we took it up, where we ourselves evaluated the surgeries being done as scored ourselves as category A, B, and C. So it's a good fixation, or how is it acceptable, not acceptable. But the not acceptable is where we try to develop ourselves and find out and really probe into it, so that things go, the patient, as Sir always, Suresh Lulla's famous line, cost of poor quality. its underlying factor, especially for a trauma patient. So we try to bring down much of infection rates and everything, so the clinical outcome is good. So this is what we reached out, and I just shared you this November-December figure, where we operated nearly 1,530 patients, out of which they categorized into which needs revision, which needs observation, and could have been done better. But this could have been done better. We try to definitely keep improving. But with our volume, that number we felt was a bit high. But we keep doing it so that the patients really benefit from this. I mean, that is our end result. I'm just sharing one or two of our clinical outcomes because there are quite a few. And all these audits really, especially for trauma, it improved the quality of fixation significantly and provided tremendous teaching potential. That's what it was really required. And also, as Sir was saying, like my experience, because our hospital has won both for Ramakrishna Bajaj Quality Trophy and the award. So when that really opened up my eyes a lot, because we did have on strategic planning, but it focused more on how to go about it. That was something which was very, made me very thought-provoking. And also, I have to thank Ramakrishna Bajaj because we had, of course, every patient is a customer, and we were focused on that. But sustainability is something which is very important, and good governance, because most of our team leaders have been here for so long. I mean, we never knew that. We never really put much thought into it unless when I started analyzing everything. So I really have to thank IMC Ramakrishna Bajaj for opening up that concept, and also successor planning and of competitive data, which was something, we had data here, there, but to get a competitor in our environment, that also really opened us hope, like how things are happening in area hospitals. So I really have to thank Ramakrishna Bajaj for those aspects. And I think I will just finally like to close by saying whatever, it's just that in healthcare, it's always the patients whom we all look up to, and they are the most best informed, more demanding nowadays, and more involved. And so we have to give our best to them. Thank you, sir. Yeah. Thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity to share a few of my our best practices and our clinical outcomes with the forum.
Just 1 second. So, thank you very much, Ramaji, for, I would say, whatever you have shown, that's what shows why Ganga Hospital is reached the kind of heights where it has reached. I think this whole concept of all the clinicians taking the rounds together, and even in the outpatients, them kind of meeting and doing it, is very unique. And I think if the same thing could be taken up by many other hospitals and everything, healthcare, this would be a great improvement in the healthcare services. So thank you. And now let me bring in Dr. Anup Negwekar, who is the Director of Projects at Dr. M.L. Dhawale Memorial Organization. He is involved in the homeopathic academics, clinical services, community development initiatives, and has played, I think, a huge role in developing the accreditation processes of Ayush services for a long time. He is appointed as a member of the governing body of the National Institute of Homeopathy, which is the premier institute of Ministry of Ayush. So And as I always said, that Ayush, a lot of their offerings have an inherent advantage that the kind of the harms which are associated with the modern system of medicine, you don't have to at least deal with that by and large. So over to you, to Dr. Anup Nigwekar, as to how these accreditation and things like the process excellence can help you.
Yeah. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you, Agarwal sir. Thank you, Lula sir, for taking me on board for this unique event. Sir, I basically am a homeopath, and I have been associated with NABH as well as Ramakrishna Bajaj National Quality Awards, rather RBNQA for longer duration than my association with the NABH. The most beautiful part of the whole journey that I have experienced so far is that, Ayush accreditations is something that has just got initiated, say, maybe around 6 to 7 years back. And this journey has been unique for all the participants of this process of accreditation, be it the people who have applied or people who have, attempted to assess. People have attempted to address to the systems approach, which is so unique for any quality management. Because inherently, Ayush is a pretty individualized therapeutic system. And for individualized therapeutic system, getting into standardized modes of processes or systems is a journey in itself. This whole process of trying to bring in system perspectives in treating the patients, or as is said in NABH, for quality of care and safety of patients. These are very uniquely positioned for Ayush. We realized it very actively when we attempted to undergo accreditation for our hospital at Palghar, which is a unique blend of a homeopathic system on its own as well as an allopathic system, which is also associated with us. This combo we had to create because we were uniquely placed in a pretty backward region when we created this hospital. The process of accreditation, brought us to the awareness of what is a structured way of going ahead in understanding how hospitals care of patient, what is the concept of quality in care of patient, and what are the steps that one needs to initiate itself to. The learning from this accreditation for us was, becoming one whole team, which realized the value that is important in, giving the patient the service for which he seeks our help. After having got the process of accreditation, we felt that the processes are kind of in shape, and the CQI indicators, so the continuous quality improvement processes, are in a fair degree of our capture. We thought that we should also try and place ourselves to the assessment of RBNQA. When we swapped our gears from the plain hospital accreditation to trying to get ourselves assessed in this RBNQA model, we realized that the concept of balanced scorecard that comes up is something that is uniquely distinct when it comes to accreditation as a process. Where results or the outcomes, which are obviously checked as far as our CQI indicators are concerned in the accreditation, results as far as the RBNQA goes, it encompassed the whole experience of the customer. So the customer, who we also come to know in accreditation as the patient, patient's relatives, the staff, the people who are offering services. We were able to try and figure out how technology brings in customer satisfactions, how we can bring in those areas of reaching out to people. We went on to try and figure out what are the kind of results that one has to go beyond the CQI indicators in the processes. The most important thing that we got to know is that, what is done needs to be documented, because what is documented is measured, and what is measured is the only thing that takes us to the journey of further improvements. This process is a repetitive process, so there is no end all to all this, because safety of the patient and the health of the patient, is always has to be delivered much beyond what is just taking care of his disease. And that whole perspective, brought us to the awareness, the holisticness that one needs to look at when we are offering services in the field of healthcare, which really is an eye-opener for a lot of people when I venture into, as my role that I play at the RBNQA, and I attempt to go and assess hospitals. The type of change that hospitals look up to beyond accreditation is a journey in itself, which is best experienced when one starts walking on it. This is one journey where customer delight becomes a core concept. When only patient walks in with a disease and he walks out with a fair amount of health, that doesn't end the journey of the doctor patient or the hospital and the patient relationship. How much more can we ensure that the processes that we are adopting to take care of our patients, how much we are able to streamline those processes, how much we can ensure that the processes can do up things in a much faster way, much cheaper way, because end of the day, health comes at a cost. And the less the cost to the patient, it adds a smile which is bigger to the patient's face. These concepts and these experiences that we had, just brings us and our institution in the movement of going beyond the accreditation zone, and then the process of excellence, which we are attempting to work on, it's boundless, and improvements in every nook and corner processes is a demand of time every day and every hour for that matter. This is something that we actually have experienced in the last 4 years that we have been accredited and assisted the IMC as well. And we would like to carry forward on this excellent journey that we have launched. And I wish all the people who are viewing this event would carry home lessons which will enthuse them to walk on this path of this movement towards excellence. That's where I would like to take the stop to the whatever I will share. And I thank you all for your patient listening, as well as the organizers who have ensured that I was able to give off whatever little experience I have gathered in this process. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Anup Negwekar, and especially your emphasis on the importance of making healthcare affordable and bringing smile to the patients when this issue of cost is extremely important. And I think it's a lesson to be learned also by the modern system of medicine. And as you have said about all the ancillary benefits of this journey, from accreditation to the next one to the process improvement and everything. And now I call upon Dr. Parag Rindani, who is the head of the Wokhard Hospital. Dr. Parag Rindani actually needs no introduction. He is one of the most sought after speakers in our conferences all over the country. He is such a delight to listen to. He is a postgraduate in microbiology, hospital administration and management with finance as a specialization. He's a principal assessor of NABH, and he has successfully conducted many programs on infection control using PDCA cycles and many things. But above all, I have always admired, I said, Parag for his very crisp, to the point kind of delivery. And we will like to listen to him as to his, I would say, take on the journey beyond accreditation. Thank you, Parag. I'm not able to hear you.
Okay. Good evening. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, now you're audible.
So good evening, and thank you very much for that warm introduction, Dr. Agarwal. I'm just going to rush through a few points. I believe that after me, I have another eminent speaker, Joy.
Actually, Joy is having some problem of connectivity, so you can please go ahead.
Okay, sir. Fine. So my take on quality beyond accreditation. So I was fortunate to work in the second hospital in the country that achieved accreditation way back in 2005. And over the years, I think one of the biggest advantages that accreditation gives all of us, and we're very grateful to Dr. Gyani and at NABH and all the subsequent leadership at NABH and right up to Dr. Kochar and to CAHO and all the members of CAHO. And of course, IMC, RB and QA, because we've been learning all these years the structures of quality. But I think what's very important is at the end of the day, how are you able to channelize this in the one thing that everybody loves? And that is money. So according to me, this is something that I learned when I was doing my business administration, that there is essentially a triple bottom line which needs to be adhered to. It's not just the financial bottom line, but the triple bottom line is that of people, planet, and profit in that particular order. So I'll just dwell on each one of these aspects one by one. I think people, it's self-explanatory. All those of you who have attended a program on implementation on NABH, if you remember the 7th or 8th slide, it talks about advantages to staff. And I think that's something which is very pertinent because staff working in accredited hospitals, accredited institutions do benefit a lot, and there's a lot of safety all around. I think the other important thing is we've really learned to respect the planet. 4th edition onwards, there is a standard on the green planet and how we're able to safeguard our planet. But I think what accreditation has also taught us that the quality improvement and patient safety chapter does tell you that you're supposed to do quality improvement projects. And that's where the entire crux of this today's discussion around quality beyond accreditation begins. Because accreditation to me is a beautiful structure, a beautiful scaffold on which you're expected to weave beautiful, lovely colored clothes, which is called quality improvement projects. Now, most of us, unfortunately, end up doing the same quality improvement projects with similar charts and lovely tools. Unfortunately, we don't think beyond the basic 2-3 tools of brainstorming, and maybe somebody actually goes up to a Pareto. But I think here I'd like to quote one of my favorite authors. And since I speak and read and write Russian, Lev Tolstoy is one of my favorite authors. And way back in 1878, in his book Anna Karenina, which is a very famous book translated in many, many languages, Mr. Tolstoy writes that all happy families are alike, but every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way. Similarly, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that we have to understand that not all of us may have a problem with turnaround time for radiology or for supply chain management issues or for things related to discharges, etc. But we have to identify our own pain points within our families and work on those. Of course, as I've learned over the years from Mr. Suresh Lulla and Kimpro, one of the things that we need to do is constantly utilize both sides of our brain. That is the left brain with its analytical skills and the right brain with creativity. As we've learned with Mr. Lulla in problem solving version 2.0, which is a specific tool dealing with problem solving and application of mind, both the sides to any improvement project, one must be able to use all the tools that we learn in quality, that is brainstorming, Pareto, flow charting, etc., but also use problem solving tools using creativity, which is using your right brain. I personally think that nobody should be allowed to close a quality improvement project till they've actually managed to quantify what is the gain that they've brought in, whether it's a tangible gain with respect to financial benefits, or whether it's an intangible gain with respect to learnings, with respect to patient satisfaction, or such other. Because at the end of the day, we must understand that top management commitment to quality is only going to be exhibited when we, at the levels that we are at, whether it's a department of quality, which I don't like as a word, but these are the areas which are going to be reviewed by management as your performance. And as Mr. Lulla rightly said, profit is the byproduct of performance excellence. If you're able to show performance excellence, everybody is happy. You're able to show profit on top of that, sone pe suhaga, mashallah. So I think at the end of the day, it's very important that we're able to show financial impact of top management. One of the things that we've all been grappling with over the last year has been COVID. And what are the wake-up message to tell you that the payer is not always going to be around to pay. We've got to learn to make things crisper, leaner, better, quicker, cheaper. And these are the facets of quality improvement that we should constantly be focusing upon. Whether we're talking about digital consultations, or we are talking about the starting tomorrow vaccination by Prime Minister Modi, everything requires management, everything requires improvement, and every process needs to be improved. I always love to take this analogy that whenever you're talking about quality improvement, you're only talking about process improvement. Like the nephron is the unit of the kidney, process is the unit of quality. I mean, process is the unit of quality. As long as you're endeavoring to improve process rather than improving people, I think you've got it right. And one of the things that I read with W. Edwards Deming was that all mistakes belong to the management, and all mistakes belong to the system, and the system belongs to management. So as long as we understand that it's not individuals who make the mistakes, but it's the system that is to be sort of comprehensively overhauled when required, I think we will be on the right track of quality beyond accreditation. Systems and processes are the mainstay of any sort of quality system, and accreditation provides you a beautiful chance to go in and set up those systems and processes. As we've learned in Juran's trilogy, with quality planning, quality control, and quality improvement, you need to do the first two in order to be able to reap the benefits of the third. Believe me, you're sitting on millions and millions of rupees, lakhs and lakhs of rupees of money to be reaped from quality improvement. How much you're able to give to your top management and how much you're able to consolidate your institution is something that you should be dwelling on. Not forgetting, Lev Tolstoy words, that you have your own dukhras. So focus on those and stop looking around to others for going on the path of quality beyond accreditation. Mr. Agarwal, Dr. Agarwal, over to you, sir.
Thank you, Parag. And I think you have very beautifully tried to emphasize that how the basic accreditation structure itself offers a huge amount of, I would say, framework around which the quality journey can start. And of course, the continuous quality is an important integral part of the same framework. Unfortunately, I would say majority of the organizations somehow become interested in getting the stamp of accreditation rather than trying to implement the objectives and to understand the standards and to implement it. And therefore, developing the culture of safety, I do not find it happening as often as one would like it to happen. Now, that's a big challenge. And I don't think anybody has there is no capsule that you can give to people, but the capsule has been provided by Mr. Lulla in a way that if I would say organizations like Parag's and the UI and everybody, we need to come out with more studies on the cost of poor quality. You see, our administrators, who are basically the finance guys, can only understand the language of finance. And if we can show them that the cost of poor quality is huge, and therefore, if we can impress upon that part, I think we may make a journey towards bringing up a culture of safety. Today, bringing up a culture of safety seems like, it's like a demand of some people who are half crazy or what, and they have no respect for the bottom line of the hospital, without trying to understand that one small incident, let's say 10 neonates dying in a particular organization, or one neonate was found to be alive just after being discharged as dead, can close the hospital for a month. And you can understand the huge amount of damage it does to the brand as well as to the entire finances of the hospital. See, we open the discussion to the participants because we are almost nearing our time, Maya, the time. Am I right? Because we have,
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah.
So I think we'll ask first of all, any questions from the participants.
Yes.
You can put it on the in the chat box, or if you raise hand, I can, we can unmute you.
Yes. So far, we've just received that only a good session. No questions so far, but I would request participants to please send in your questions if there are. So, sir is there.
So if there is no question, then I will just ask this
sir.
thing from each one of them as to what is their prescription of making this culture of safety as an important ingredient for reaching anywhere.
Absolutely,
so
sir. Please. Yes.
I'll go there and have Mr. Lulla in the last.
Lulla sir is trying to reconnect. So we'll just wait for him. So in the meanwhile, Dr. Rindani sir can take it forward. Yeah.
So I think at the very outset, I think all of us will agree that Indians as a nation are a very risk-prone nation. We love crossing the roads when we are not supposed to. We put on our seatbelts only when we have to. We love riding on pillion without a helmet. We love taking NSAIDs when we know that they cause harm. We love eating golgappas on the street, though we know the water may be contaminated. So we are pretty cool, like, we're like, theek hai, dekh lenge. But at the same time, when we are given the responsibility of taking care of somebody's health, and when we are responsible for that healthy person or that sick person to go home vertically in terms of walking out and not on in a body bag, I think that's a huge responsibility. And I think that here the culture of safety development gains huge proportions in terms of the things that we do. I would just give you the Bible of culture of safety. When you look at the NABH standards, each and every word in that Bible or in that Quran or in that Bhagavad Gita of quality talks essentially of how you're going to view culture of safety, starting from fire safety, going up to quality improvement, going up to falls prevention, going up to medication safety, look-alike, sound-alike medication, credentialing, privileging. I think everything is about developing culture of safety. Now, the question that also arises is, how do you monitor the culture of safety? How do you measure? So we at our institution use the ARC tool of monitoring the culture of safety. And we actually found that we were good, but we still put in a quality improvement project on enhancing the culture of safety. And we've taken that further significantly. So the AHRQ, or as it's popularly called, the ARC culture of safety survey tool is very good. It can be modified and can be used. It's not easy to develop a culture of safety because everybody thinks, chalta hai na, kya hua, is time bach gaye, agli baar bhi bach jayenge. So I think that it takes a lot of time. Dr. Rama, any views on this?
No, one second. Sorry to intervene, Rindani sir. Dr. Agarwal, there's a question for Dr. Parag Rindani that what are all the process improvement tools that can be tried to avoid drug errors?
Well, that was one of our latest quality improvement projects. Well, the tools can't avoid drug errors. It's you who have to avoid the drug errors. So that's one correction, Dr. Brito. But as you go ahead, I think starting from data collection, histograms, root cause analysis, frankly, if you have not started the hospital, a failure mode and effects analysis on the processes that you're going to undergo, a Pareto analysis to understand where are the problems coming from, brainstorming to discuss all of this, a scatter plot to see which unit is giving you more errors, to stratify the errors, sentinel event analysis in case you had deaths due to adverse drug reactions. I think you've got to take a mix of statistical tools and quality improvement tools. Ladies and gentlemen, statistical tools are your mean, median, mode, standard deviation, and all of that. Quality improvement tools are your flowcharts, Paretos, brainstorming, histograms, etc. So you've got to be able to use a mix of both, and if possible, try and sprinkle a little bit of creative process within this, as my guru, Mr. Lulla, always says. And then you have a lot of improvement happening, whether it's drug errors or false prevention or look-alike, sound-alike medication issues, etc. I hope I've answered your question, Dr. Brito. Vijay sir, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. And so, Ma'am Rama, although you have given a great prescription today, let me just tell you that in your presentation, what you did in terms of making the culture of safety, if you can prevail upon and rope in your clinicians, the way you have done it, they has to stand together, whether in terms of the inpatient or in an ICU or even an outpatient, hats off to you. And I think that's one great prescription, I would say, for bringing in a culture of safety. And that is to be led by the clinicians. I think that is one of the problems that we are having, that somehow this game of, I would say, healthcare delivery, which was initially only a game between a physician, a doctor, and a patient, has now become like a game of cricket or a football, where there is a multi-stake delivery happening. And the doctor has forgotten to be the captain of this team. He's just trying to remain on one side and say, all right, I'll just do this and thank you very much. But that's not how it is going to happen. He has to come to the forefront and take charge and be the captain.
Yes. And see, as you said, sir, of course, it's the clinicians who are doing most of my work. I mean, they're doing their part, but being, I recently I've introduced, because when I see, I mean, it's all I'm talking very practically what's happening. From my security to everybody in the hospital, sometimes they try to empower the patients, like as if the patients are coming to them. So I started a new one. It's in a Tamil word. It's called Ganga Namade. Ganga is my hospital name, and Namade means it's ours, a sense of belonging. We have started doing that in a very big way with flyers, with badges, and I'm having a lot of external people for them to feel that they are also, they have a role to play. From my, we call the grade 4, my sweeping people, everybody is involved in it. We've just started that. We are in fact, we are analyzing how they were before we started this program for them, how they are now, just to get, as you say, cultural safety for them. We are trying to bring in this culture. Other than my clinicians, my other support staffs. So we have started that. It's something very
empowered nurses in your organization as a part of this team.
Yes, my senior, usually when they go for these rounds, it's not only the clinicians, but also that particular ward nurse or the supervisor, or the not necessarily the nursing superintendent, but the ward supervisor, because they sometimes interact more, they know more about that patient in the general ward or whatever. So they go along with them, and they also give their inputs of how the patient is and everything. So they're also involved. Sorry, I didn't put them in the picture, but they're also part of it.
Thank you. So I think if there is no more question, I would like to thank all my panelists. Of course, profound thanks to Mr. Suresh Lulla, Madam Rama Rajshekharan, to Dr. Anup Nigwekar, and to Dr. Parag Rindani. Thank you very much for making this session.
Dr. Vijay, can I speak something? Can I talk?
Yes, yes, please.
Yeah. Actually, I am myself Prashant Mudarwadkar. I am from industry. Actually, I am working as a deputy general manager in Crompton Consumer Electricals Limited.
Yes.
I am from industry. So actually, I have attended first session, and in hospital, all quality concept which we are implementing in our factory, everything is implemented in hospital. It is a really surprise, because I attended first time, and very glad to. I am very much happy. I hope I understand that. I think actually I am also not aware such thing is happening in hospital. There are many things, but I think there should be some forum that such things are happen in hospital should be have some publication or something. I don't know whether it is having, but really it is a very good practice. Everything I'm really surprised. No words from my side.
Thank you so much. Yes, I would say
Yeah.
that the involvement of the community is in understanding these practices is also very important. It is very important for the community.
Means mean mode, median, Pareto, such things from doctors really surprise.
Sir, if the general public would sort of go out of the fact that doctors are there only to make money, we are here to make patients
They will
safe,
then understand.
to provide evidence-based medicine, and essentially to ensure that at a national level we are able to make healthcare cheaper for everybody. We are able to support the Indian diaspora because all of us had an opportunity to go abroad. We all stayed here to serve our country. So, it's for all of us, it's a matter of great pride that healthcare has reached in the last
Yes.
level. So I think, thank you for those warm words, and we on behalf of Indian healthcare accept that compliment. I think what's very important is that we need to move forward in this journey, and we need to constantly doing quality improvement so that we're able to provide more efficient healthcare.
Sure, correct. Yeah, okay.
So over to you, Maya, if you have any words to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Agarwal, for your time and all the expertise that you have showcased for all our guests. And to Dr. Parag Rindani, Dr. Anup Nikwekar, and Rama ma'am for their wonderful contribution. It is unfortunate that Mr. Joy Chakravarti could not connect. There was some major issue. And Lula sir just now had a drop in his connectivity. He's missing it, but I think he cannot reconnect still. So we are missing sir's, parting words right now for this program. But anyway, thank you so much. It was a wonderful session. I'm seeing so many good things being written, and it's all thanks to the expertise that is on board for this program. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. Bye-bye.
Yeah, take care.
Thank you.